I'm Kayla.
I'm Anna. This is Laughs and Legacies. Hi everyone, welcome back to Laughs and Legacies. We're so excited for our 4th episode. First of all, thank you to everyone who went and listened to our first release this last Monday.
We had a huge success, honestly. We both were expecting maybe 10 people, just family members, to listen, and there were tons of people that came up to us like, oh my gosh, your podcast. I was like, thank you.
Yeah, seriously, like people I just didn't think that would listen. I don't know. This was just to be really fun for us in one way. And it would just be a plus that everyone else listened to it too. And I've been so surprised. Thank you guys so much. And thank you for your stories too. So many people have submitted stories and we're going to share some of those bad boys tonight. Our prompt tonight is when I was younger stories. Everyone has such good stories for these. Like, I just go to work or go to school and everyone's always got one. They're so good. And tonight we're lucky enough that we don't have to share any of our own. We're just going to share all the ones that have been submitted, starting with the one that Kayla's going to tell us tonight.
Yep. So we could probably do an entire segment on all the naughty things that our mom did. She was a little Tasmanian devil. She has told us so many stories of her growing up. Like, for a little bit of insight, she has, they have called poison control on her 3 separate occasions. One time for eating an entire thing of Rolaids, or drinking an entire bottle of Rolaids, eating wart medicine, and then eating an entire bottle of vitamins. The one that really gets me is the wart medicine. Couldn't have been good.
That poor baby.
So, that's a little insight on some of her craziness. But this story tonight is actually, she was trying to do something nice. So, just turned into a disaster. I'm going to tell the story in my mom's point of view. It just sounds better and all. So, my mom worked part-time in the hospital. She had left me home with my sister, who was 5 years older than me. She called home, and I answered. She asked me where my sister was. So I put the phone down, and she could hear me in the background running to the door, knocking and yelling my sister's name. I came back to the phone to tell her that she wouldn't open the door. She told me, go back. So we went back to the door, banged on the door again, and yelled her name. Still no response. So I went back to the phone, and instead of telling her anything about her sister, she goes, guess what, Mummy? I'm making you a lovely cake. Of course, my mom panicked, hung up the phone, and called our neighbor Barbara to go over to the house. And when Barbara showed up, I had put a cake mix, a Jell-O mix, multiple eggs, she didn't remember how many, multiple of them, shell and all, and other ingredients from around the house into a plastic bowl.
Yum.
I did remember to use the beaters to stir it all together, as well as lift them into the air while on full blast to flick all over the kitchen.
Oh, man.
I even proceeded to preheat the oven to broil.
Oh, broil. She knew what she was doing.
Not sure how she got up on the counter or onto the stove to turn that on, but that's besides the point. She did it. She knew what she was doing. Sort of. Last but not least, I put the mixture into the oven while still in the plastic bowl. When Barbara arrived, the bowl had begun to melt through the oven rack. You can just imagine that smell, just plastic burning in the house.
Yum.
So our mom doesn't even remember this happening. She was so young, she doesn't remember doing this at all. But she has been told this story so many times and has then told us the story so many times. It just has to be shared. It's a legendary story and had to be shared tonight. Such a naughty little girl.
Oh my goodness. I love her.
So, yeah. Well, oh, sorry?
Oh, yeah. The next one's about her little brother.
Yeah, the next one's about our Uncle Keith. So.
Oh, Uncle Keith. He has quite a few stories that he shared with us that are just the epitome of boyhood.
Of little boys.
Seriously, growing up, him and his family would camp at the... Can you say it for me?
Wasatch State Park.
Thank you. Next to the camping grounds, there was a golf course. Trying to keep him and the other little kids busy, they would go into a small forest area behind the course to go golf ball hunting.
They thought it was so cool, by the way. As they were telling us the story, like, we thought it was the coolest thing ever to go golf ball hunting. They didn't even play golf. None of them. Not even our grandpa.
Dude, that's like Easter egg hunting.
Exactly.
His dad, our grandfather, would always try to keep them quiet while doing this so they wouldn't disturb the golfers. As a little boy, Keith liked to cause some trouble, and his dad would tell Keith to stop messing around and follow his footsteps. So, Keith did exactly that. As they both continued to hunt for golf balls, Keith jumped from footstep to footstep that his dad left behind on the ground, landing exactly where his dad would step.
Being a little stinker.
Yeah, eventually, he stepped on the log after his dad. And poor little boy Keith, he disturbed a wasp nest. They all came out and started stinging Keith all over the face. And screaming his head off, his dad picked him up and ran and climbed over a 6-foot wall while holding Keith. And seeing that the wasp still didn't leave him alone, his dad chucked him into a pond. And when Keith came out of the pond, his poor little face was so swollen.
Poor guy, honestly.
That is such a boyhood story. I love it.
I've never even been stung by anything before, like bee, wasp, anything, so I don't exactly know how that would feel, but I don't want to imagine how being stung all over the face would feel.
Yeah, right on the face. A few months ago, we were in Alaska, and I had no idea that wasp nest would be in the ground. Don't ask, I just didn't know that. And I stepped on a wasp nest, and it came and stung me right in the butt.
Oh.
It got me.
Could you imagine you just scratching your butt, like, in so much pain?
It hurt. It hurt so bad.
Like, what are you doing?
I was like, Auntie Kenra, can you check my butt and see if it's okay? And she pulled. Sorry, I don't know. Sorry, everyone, but she looked. She's a nurse. She's good. She's like, I see this all the time. She pulls down my pants and she sees. She's like, oh, you're good, but your butt is so tan.
That's all that matters. She had a tan butt.
Yeah. Oh, we have another Keith story. Ready, Kayla?
Yeah. So, in this story, he's a little bit older than the last one. Last one, I think he said he was about 5 or 6. And this one, he's about 12 or 13 years old. And he was invited to go skiing by his brother-in-law with a couple of their other siblings. And although living in Utah his whole life, he had never been skiing before. So that brother-in-law let him use his old skis from when he was about that same age. So, needless to say, they were a little bit old. They had a pretty successful trip and a fun day on the slopes until the last run. Of course, it always ends up that way. The very last run just all goes to pot. But they were going up on the lift, and as they were about to get off, he ended up falling off the lift. So somehow in the process of him falling, he had crossed his legs, and then they had done a 180-degree turn, breaking both of his shins.
Oh my...
The pain, just thinking about it just hurts. Breaking both of his shins. Oh. And of course, he's in a lot of pain. So he's screaming bloody murder, and the only reaction he gets was his older sister going, "Stop screaming, you're embarrassing!" He's like, "I'm in pain, are you kidding me?" No. You're so embarrassing.
That is such a sister thing to say.
Honestly. So, of course, I'm not sure how long it took, but the first aid came up. They wrapped him up, brought him down on the toboggan, and took him to the hospital. They had casted him up from ankle to groin.
Oh.
And ended up staying in those casts for 6 months.
Oh, baby
Because
Keith.
it probably wouldn't have been that long. But he was there for 6 months because as he started to heal, the doctors realized he was healing crookedly. So they had to re-break his legs.
Oh, no.
And then recast them. If it wasn't bad enough the first time, re-breaking them to recast them because it was crooked.
That is the cruelest thing.
Poor little Uncle Keith is so sad.
He
just both times they were just like, stop being annoying, stop being a little boy. Oh, so sad.
Oh, Keith, you're a trooper. We love you. Oh man, the last story. This one gets me. This is so funny.
This is so funny.
This was a submission from literally today as we're recording, and we read it just before we started recording, and we
took out a story. We're like, we're not going to tell this. Like, it was one of my stories. We took out my story to add this story in. Instead, we're like, this is way better.
Oh yes, it is so good. This is from our cousin Emily. Love you, girl. She wrote this herself. I'm going to read it as she wrote it. She titled it Lunchbox on the Roof. She says, "Hey girls, this happened back when I was in 7th grade, so it wasn't crazy long ago, but I was younger. Every day after lunch, if you had a lunchbox, you would walk back to your homeroom classroom to put your lunchbox next to the door. Then, at the end of the day, you would grab it right before you would leave, so after my last class period, I started heading back to my homeroom, and when I turned a corner, I saw that my lunchbox was hanging off the ledge of the roof. And this most likely had something to do with the dumb boys who would go and throw people's lunchboxes to each other, and mine ended up on the roof in the process. So, I told my teacher, and they got it down for me. But this is where it gets worse. So the next day, I went to lunch and headed back to my homeroom to put my lunchbox away. I was walking with our cousin, Shaylee Grace, and when I turned the corner, I decided I was going to try and toss my lunchbox to the next door.
We're laughing before you even tell the story.
But when I went to throw it, I let go way too late, and I threw it on the roof. So then I had to go to the teacher and explain that my lunchbox ended up on the roof the very next day. After it already happened the first time, but this time I didn't specify how it had gotten up there. But nobody asked, so luckily I didn't have to explain that I had thrown my own lunchbox up there myself. But it was so funny to me and Shaylee. We just ended up on the floor crying, laughing. So good memory.
I feel like there's always something that happens with lunch in elementary school. I guess she was in 7th grade, but still basically same age.
Oh, Emily, I love you. I wish I was there to see it.
Like, the very next day, like, my lunchbox is up there again. I would have blamed it on the boys, too, if it was me. I'm like, yeah, those boys,
Darn
they're
it.
naughty. I love it. Well, that's all we got for you guys today. But again, thank you for the submissions, and we're so excited to keep coming back with more and more stories. As a reminder, our next week's story, our prompt, is vacation stories. So hopefully your mind starts rolling to send some in to us for a good vacation story.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time.
Yay!